Chapter 1: The Imperial Capital Chang'an. In the first year of Tianbao, on the first day of the first lunar month, Emperor Lilongji of the Tang dynasty visited the Qingjing building. He received congratulations from the court and granted amnesty to the whole world, and changed the name to Tianbao. Later, Pinglubi was divided into Jiedu and Enlushan was appointed as Jidushi. This event marked the formation of the 10 Jidushi envoys in the Tang dynasty. In the first month of the first year of Tianbao, the Tang dynasty had 331 prefectures and 800 Jaisai prefectures. In order to resist the intrusion of neighboring tribes, 10 military governors and military envoys were successively set up in various places along the border, and troops were recruited to guard the border. The power of the generals in border defense towns increased, creating a situation where the internal affairs were neglected and the external affairs were emphasized. Anshi Jiedu controlled the western regions and commanded 24,000 troops. Baiting Jiedu controlled Tukashi and Jianquan tribes and stationed in Yizhou and Shizhou, commanding 20,000 troops. Hashi Jiedu cut off the Tubo and Turks and commanded 73,000 troops. Longyu Jiedu prepared to defend Tubo and commanded 75,000 troops. Shuafeng Jiedu defended the Turks with an army of 64,700 men. Hedong Jiedu and Shuafeng fought against the Turks with an army of 55,000 men. Fanyang Jiedu Lin controlled Shi and Khitan, commanding 91,400 troops. Pinglu Jiedu controlled Fu Shiwei and Moa, commanding 37,500 troops. Jiananji fought against Tibet in the west and pacified the barbarians in the south, commanding 39,000 troops. The 5 prefectures in Lingnan managed Suijinji and Xiao, commanding 15,400 troops. In addition, there is Changeljinglu, which Fuzhou leads with 1,500 soldiers. Donglai will guard the capture, Laizhou will lead it, Dongmo will guard the capture, and Dengzhou will lead it. Each has 1,000 soldiers. There are a total of 490,000 soldiers and more than 80,000 horses in each section. Before the Kaiyuan dynasty, the annual cost of clothing and food for the frontier soldiers was only 2 million. During the Tianbao period, the number of frontier soldiers increased, and the annual use of clothing and food was 1.9 million hu, and the people began to suffer hardship. In the late Kaiyuan period, when peace lasted for a long time and the country was in peace, Emperor Lilongji gradually lost his spirit of seeking governance. After the reform of Yuan Tianbao, politics became more corrupt, land annexation accelerated, and many people moved into exile. The equalization of land system was destroyed, and the peasants who owned equal land lost their land and became refugees, which also caused the complete destruction of the government army system. Later, border troubles increased, troops continued to be used, garrison periods were extended, and corruption became increasingly serious. Border generals embezzled soldiers' property and forced them to perform hard labor for themselves, so no one wanted to serve as a government soldier. In the early Tang dynasty, the phubbing system since the Western Wei, Northern Zhou, and Sui dynasties was implemented, but the phubbing system was based on the equalization of land. The targets of the government army recruitment were farmers under the land equalization system. When the land equalization system was destroyed, the government army system lost the economic foundation on which it relied. Therefore, starting from the Kaiyuan period, the recruitment system gradually replaced the government army system. After the implementation of the military recruitment system, the state recruited male soldiers to serve as soldiers, provided them with food and clothing, and were exempted from tax and service. This reduces the burden of military service on farmers, saves the consumption of transportation and travel by government troops, is conducive to the development of production, and provides a reliable source of troops for border defense military towns. After Tianbao, due to the long period of peace, people believed that China could sell its troops, and civilians were prohibited from carrying weapons. With the changes in the political economy, the social atmosphere has also changed. People are ashamed to serve as soldiers, and those whose children are military officers are looked down upon by their fathers and brothers. Those who apply are all businessmen and scoundrels who have never practiced martial arts. And because Emperor Li Longji listened to Prime Minister Li Linfu's slander, he adopted the policy of using barbarians to control barbarians. The Judici envoys mostly appointed Hu people, and the soldiers in the border towns also included a large number of Hu people. The fierce generals and elite soldiers were all concentrated in several large border defense towns, creating a situation where the inside was undervalued and the outside was emphasized. Moreover, soldiers under the recruitment system regard soldiering as their profession, and generals command an army for a long time. There is a subordinate relationship between soldiers and generals, which leads to the formation of warlords. The Tianbao of the Tang dynasty lasted 3 years. In this year, Emperor Li Longji of the Tang dynasty had nothing to do, so he did an extremely boring thing, changed year to Zai. In order to show that his cultural and martial arts skills are as famous as those of the ancient Tang and Yu emperors. At this time, a young man named Hua Xing was at the Jingguang Gate of Chang'an City. He tugged at his baggage, touched the letter and road guide in his arms, and looked up at the sky, as if to say, "Hello, Tang Dynasty. I'm here." Because he is a time traveler. More than 3 months ago, Hua Xing was just a senior liberal arts student at a university in the 21st century. He participated in a volunteer teaching program and went to teach somewhere in the West. Perhaps due to the high altitude, he suffered altitude sickness and fainted at a road rest stop. Queen Hua Xing found that he woke up and became the 20-year-old Xianggong scholar who came to Beijing to take the exam in the 3rd year of the Tang dynasty and fell ill in and on the outskirts of Chang'an. Hua Xing with the same name. After more than 3 months of suffering, Hua Xing found that he had missed the spring. Hua Xing looked at the ancient capital of the 14 dynasties at this moment, and the description of her in the previous book passed through his mind. It was the capital of the Sui and Tang dynasties, the most majestic capital in ancient China, and the largest city in the history of the world. With an area of 87.27 square kilometers, it is 2.54 times that of Chang'an City in the Han Dynasty, 1.45 times that of Beijing City in the Ming and Qing dynasties, 7.29 times that of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire during the same period, 2.87 times that of Baghdad built in 800 AD, and 6.39 times that of Rome. Its population exceeds 1 million. For thousands of years since then, it has been the largest capital city built by mankind and is the well-deserved first city in the world. However, the Angshi rebellion broke out, and the rebels attacked Luoyang, broke through Tongguan, and the city of Chang'an fell and was ravaged by military disasters. Later, when Li Guangbi and Guazi borrowed troops to return to Hehe to regain Chang'an, they were ravaged by military disasters again. There are not more than 1,000 households in the Middle Jin, and there are thorns in Jingyi, and they are called by jackals. There is a lack of military reserves and manpower. The population is cut off, and the country is in a state of depression. Du Fu wrote a poem. The Queen of Tianbao is lonely. The garden is full of wormwood. There are more than 100 families in my house, and the world is in chaos. Since then, Chang'an has been in decline and has ceased to be the capital of China since the Song dynasty. Unsure rebellion. Hua Xing's heart tightened at this moment. Before time traveling, he knew about the horrors of the places where the rebels went, whether from TV or books. He finally traveled through time and was reborn. Although he didn't experience it in the prosperous Tang dynasty, he finally reborn and lost his life in the Unsure rebellion. It would be a big loss. Before Hua Xing traveled through time, he had successes and failures. He was not a weak person. Things had reached this point. Since they could not change, they had to find ways to adapt. They could not just sit back and wait for death. How to deal with the upcoming Angshi rebellion? After much thought, he came up with 3 options. One was to seek refuge in Anlu Mountain, one was to avoid other places, and the other was to gather a crowd to protect himself. Taking refuge is obviously not an option. Although the Angshi rebellion was powerful, it was quickly suppressed. If you don't take refuge, you won't necessarily die. If you take refuge, you will definitely die. It is not possible to avoid other places. I remember that when Anlu Mountain raised troops, Anlu Mountain climbed high and shouted, and the three towns of Pinglu, Fanyang, and Hudong were saved. An army of more than 200,000 people connected with the state capital, covering the sky and the sun, and shaking the sea. Although the world is huge, where can we find the paradise of peach blossoms? Neither can do either. The only way is to gather together to protect ourselves. However, this is easier said than done. He has no prestige, no money, no family background. He is young and weak, and the world does not know how to gather people. Ah, God. Since you let me be reincarnated as a human being, why don't you give me a golden finger? The other time travelers are showing off their bastard qualities one by one. Generals, counselors, and beauties have all entered the scene. Why am I so aggrieved when it's my turn? Hua Xing complained crazily in his heart. You scholar, what are you doing? Take out the road guide. Quick. The city gate's sergeant shouted loudly, interrupting Hua Xing's thoughts. At this time, the gate of Mingda Gate was crowded with people entering the city. It was noisy and lively. There were farmers carrying vegetables into the city, businessmen leading mules and horses, and many scholars. Man in front, please stop blocking the road and move quickly. A dozen or so farmers picking vegetables behind shouted impatiently. Brother Bing, I'm sorry. Hua Xing quickly took out the road and handed it to the sergeant. Hua Xing, Shangluo County. The city gate drawbridge was full of soldiers, but they only strictly inspected caravans or people entering the city of 2 or more people, and did not care much about those who enter the city alone. After collecting the 10 cents fee for foreigners to enter the city, a soldier waved Hua Xing to enter the city and shouted to the back, Next! Chapter 2, Visiting the Heroic Doctor. Inside Chang'an City is a different scene, a completely different world than outside the city. The end of spring is at the turn of late spring and early summer, and the rainy season is still a month away. As soon as you enter Mingda Gate, the noisy and lively atmosphere hits your face. Pedestrians are weaving. The flow is endless. The cries of vendors on both sides of a city gate come one after another, and a caravan of hundreds of camels is walking slowly. On both sides are lush and dense trees and tall and solid red square walls. In the middle is a straight and spacious Sazako Avenue, which leads into the distance. At the end of the avenue is the majestic Imperial City and Tai Chi Palace. The new green willow branches are swaying in the wind. The palaces and pavilions complement each other. The golden pagoda dome and cornices are reflected in the morning light. Hua Xing's mind has also broadened with the magnificent capital of Tang Dynasty. This will be the starting point of his new life. No matter whether the future is windy and rainy or sunny, he will go on without hesitation. The city of Chang'an in the Tang Dynasty generally had a symmetrical layout with a central axis, which was extremely neatly laid out and strictly regulated. The whole city had Zhuke Street in the north-south direction as the central axis, and the east and west sides were neatly lined with squares of equal number and area. The streets and squares are neatly arranged side by side, and the east-west and north-south streets intersect in a grid pattern. The outer city is divided into grids, and each grid is a square. The 12 streets in the Imperial City are intertwined, dividing the Imperial City area into a grid pattern. The Palace City, the Imperial City, and the Outer City are arranged in parallel. The Palace City symbolizes the North Star, which is the center of the sky. The Imperial City's official offices symbolize the Ziwei Yuan surrounding Beijing, and the Outer City symbolizes the stars arching to the north. Therefore, there is a poem from the Tang Dynasty praising the founding of the country. The east well, the city rises from the North Star. There are 8 north-south streets and 14 east-west streets in the outer city. Drainage ditches are set up on both sides of the street, and street trees such as elm and locust are planted. Among them, the 6 streets leading to the south gate and connecting the east and west gates are the main roads, most of which are more than 100 meters wide. The widest Zhuke Street is 155 meters, which is the north-south central axis of the city. Taking it as the dividing line, the east of the city belongs to Wanyan County, and the west of the city belongs to Chang'an County. Of course, there are 2 most important markets in Waigua City, East Market and West Market. Each of the two markets occupies 2 squares of land, one in the east and one in the west. The two cities are almost identical in size, with a length of about 1025 meters from north to south and a width of about 927 meters from east to west. The market is walled and has 8 doors. There are tic-tac-shaped streets and streets along the wall, dividing the city into 9 districts. Each district is surrounded by streets, and shops are located along the streets, including restaurants, jewelry stores, and handicraft workshops. Most of Chang'an City's commerce is concentrated in these 2 markets, and there are also some scattered commercial facilities in other squares. Hua Xing took out a piece of paper from his pocket and read it. Jingguangmen Huidfang, near the West Market. Then when I meet someone to ask for directions, I don't take the main street, but walk through the lanes, pass 4 or 5 lanes, and arrive outside a lane. He raised his eyes to take a look and saw a horizontal plaque hanging on the gate of a square with the words, "Wide Square," written on it. Immediately, he straightened his clothes and came to the gate of the square. There was an old soldier sitting in the school next to the door. When he saw him coming up, he walked out of the room and asked kindly, "What do you want?" "I'm Luo Huaxing. I'm here to pay homage to Mr. Tao who lives here." As he spoke, Huaxing took out the baggage and guided it to the old soldier. The old soldier took the guide and looked at it, then stood up straight and asked, "Are you a local scholar who is rushing to take the exam?" "Exactly." "Oh, please forgive me for my stupidity." The old soldier was frightened, lifted up his robe, and was about to kneel down and worship. Huaxing stopped him and said with a smile, "I don't have to be like this, old man. Dare I ask if Mr. Tao is at home?" "Come with me." The old pawn led the way and led Huaxing to the outside of Tao's courtyard. Huidfang is medium-sized, with about 60 households. The Tao family is located deep in the lane, facing south and north. The courtyard is not large, with less walls and a wooden door. The old soldier asked Huaxing to wait a moment, stepped forward, pushed the door open, stood outside the steps, and asked respectfully, "Is Mr. Tao here?" Huaxing looked into the courtyard and saw that the roof of the house was exposed, in the shape of a hanging mountain with complex tiles. There is a mulberry tree next to the house, and half of the trunk and bleak branches are also exposed outside the wall. He looked around and saw that probably because of the cold weather in late spring, or because the Western Market was open, there were only a few people walking in the alley, and there was a faint sound in the breeze. A child, who may have heard the horse neighing, poked his head out of a small courtyard not far away. He sniffed and looked at them secretly. When he caught Huaxing's gaze, he suddenly retracted his head, waited for a moment, and then quietly poked his head out again. Huaxing found it interesting and was about to laugh when he heard someone coming out of the courtyard. Before he saw the person, he heard his voice first. A woman replied, "My master is at home. It's Zhang Wang from the private school. Please come in quickly." Listening to his voice, it was very clear. Huaxing put a smile back and straightened his robes. The woman who spoke walked out of the courtyard, held the sleeves of her robe with her hands, and bowed to Huaxing. Huaxing returned the favor with a smile and said, "I went to Luo, Huaxing, and saw the girl." At this moment, he raised his head and saw this woman. She was wearing a dark red fairy dress, with red lips and white teeth, radiant and glorious. Even with a light makeup, she showed that she was more beautiful, outstanding, and refined. She was like a white lotus that should not be played with. While she was beautiful and enchanting, a cold arrogance emanated from her body. "Oh, Mr. Hua, come with me." The woman led Huaxing into the courtyard, and the old man retreated on his own. There are 3 houses directly opposite the courtyard, with a common style of 1 room and 2 rooms. There is a kitchen on the west wall, and the mulberry tree stands on the edge of the kitchen. On the east wall are pig pens, chicken pens, and toilets. Although the ground in the courtyard is dirt and not paved with bricks and stones, it is smooth and clean. The woman went inside to report. After a while, she came out and said, "The king of the family invites Mr. Hua to come to the hall." She led Huaxing to the steps in front of the hall and asked Huaxing to go first. Huaxing gave way. He did this 3 times, and the two of them climbed the steps together. The east is the main seat, and the west is the guest seat. Women come up from the east, and Huaxing comes from the west. After completing the etiquette of a host welcoming guests to the hall, Huaxing entered the hall. The breeze brought the fragrance of flowers from the yard into the small living room. The decoration in the hall was quite Chinese style. There were no chairs, only seats. There is nothing else in the hall except a few seats and a few low tables. A man was sitting on his knees on the seat next to the window in the east. He was looking at the book in his hand in the sunshine. When he heard Huaxing and the others came in, he gently closed the book. Huaxing fell to the ground and said, "Xing pays homage to Mr. Tao. It has been 3 months since we were separated from the outskirts of Gongcheng. How is Mr. Tao doing?" Tao Hanting is in his 30s and wears white clothes with a slight ink-like pattern. He is thin, his face is not deep, and his 2 thick black eyebrows are very eye-catching. He looked at Huaxing. For Tao Hanting, he had saved too many people through his chivalry and righteousness. People in the world gave him the reputation of Mengchang in white. He did not answer, but looked at Huaxing. This young man had a square face with sharp edges from the north, a high forehead, high cheekbones, a high bridge of nose, and big beautiful eyes shining in deep eye sockets. He was really a handsome young man. Tao Hanting's ancestor was a prison official and had been clean and honest for generations. Therefore, Tao Hanting had made a wish to serve the people since he was a child. In addition to studying, he also learned the Tao of Qi and Huang. However, because he failed to make good money in several scientific examinations, he always failed. After that, Tao Hanting and his wife saved lives and wounded people in Chang'an and wrote petitions to redress their grievances. The couple